So we'll start off with golf operations, and simply this is just what you've learned in the business, what makes you reach the mission, vision, and core values over at Congressional, and what members expect and what you expect and like to accomplish out of the golf operations and the side of things that membership doesn't see or some associates don't know, that go into having a successful golf operation, being either a head professional or a director of golf. So we'll kind of just start off, if you can kind of briefly talk about how you got into the business, how you got over to Congressional, what other clubs you were working at, things of that nature, just so we can be familiar of your route in the golf industry and the business.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. So I'm originally from the Boston area. I grew up just west of Boston, and went to Methodist University. I was in the PGM program there. Started playing golf in high school. Was kind of late to the game. Started caddying at a local club, and just became addicted to the game and also the environment at the golf course. And found out that it was something that you could pursue past high school. You can go to college and learn about the golf business. So I went to Methodist. I did not really see myself as a green grass pro. I thought I was going to go and be like a sales rep or work for Titleist or Callaway or something like that. But one of the great things about the PGM program is doing internships every summer. And from my first internship, I just continued that kind of love affair with the club atmosphere and just that the community around the game. And I just never looked back from there. So I did 3 internships and then ended up at the country club just outside of Boston, where the Ryder Cup was in 1999. And I spent 6 seasons there as an assistant. I did 3 winters in Florida after college. I was at a place called the Everglades Club, which is in Palm Beach, Florida. And then in 2018, in June, I left and went to Congressional, and I've been there ever since. So it's just coming up on 2 years now, and it's been a great opportunity for me. It's a completely different skill set being a head professional versus being an assistant professional. Some of the stuff I want to talk about today, but I've learned and will continue to learn just an incredible amount every day about what it means to be a successful, basically a manager or a leader. And when you go from being an assistant where you're an individual contributor, where it's your job to do certain tasks, versus it being your job to motivate and get the most out of your team, it's just a completely different mindset when you come to work.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's been fantastic.
Yeah, I know the old head pro over at Hartford Golf Club. He got out of there and he went over to another club. I think Tom Henderson used to be the head pro there, and then he retired.
Yeah, it's Joe Connerton. He went to Round Hill.
Round Hill, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Was he over at the country club when you were there?
No, he left, I think, probably 3 or 4 years before I got there. But I know him very well through that connection.
He's a great guy.
He is.
Didn't know a Harvard grad would be in the golf business.
Yeah. So he came to the country club. This is a little side story, but he came to the country club and hadn't gone to college. And he went through the Harvard Extension School, which it's like a little known secret about Harvard is you can basically take all of their classes and get a degree from them without actually getting admitted to the university. It's basically like a Harvard access for anybody. Mm-hmm. And so he was able to go through and get his degree that way. Really, really neat success story.
Yeah, he's a great guy in the business, great guy to learn from and mentor. We have Evan Lambert, who worked for him for a few years from the Hartford Golf Club. That's gonna be in the next meeting. He's now at the Northeast Performance Institute in Connecticut because he loves working with juniors and he loves teaching. So he got out of the club professional side and is in teaching and coaching now. but he worked with Joe for a number of years over at Harvard.
Got it.
But we'll get into the presentation. How do you develop relationships with other department heads, and why is it important?
So at a club like Congressional, we have, just to give you a scope of the club, we have 3 restaurants, we have 3 pools, there's a fitness center, there's a tennis facility. So you've got a lot of people, a lot of departments, and a lot of people who are experts at what they do. And in order for the club to feel small, that's our goal, is to make a big club feel small. It's really important that there's a lot of communication between departments. So we have a or a club-wide department head meeting every week, but you can only develop relationships so much in an hour. So it's important that we are always touching base with each other, just taking the temperature of the club from different perspectives. When I say temperature, I just mean like, I guess the mood or the interests of members. And people take their food a different way than they do their golf experience. Like they're very laid back and loosey goosey when it comes to golf, but they're very specific about how they like their eggs, right? And so you get to learn different things about people based on those communications. And also with events, it's really important from a food and beverage standpoint, from an agronomy standpoint, that you're really in tune with the other departments and making sure that everyone's on the same page. So we have a lot of meetings with those 2 departments specifically.
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about in terms of how they're a little different in other operations. Just kind of talking with some staff members. I understand exactly what you're coming from. Do you have any like types of events where you kind of coordinate with more than the food and beverage side of things, besides just a golf event where right after or right before they're coming from the restaurant? Do you do anything with like the pool, or like something with like a junior program where they do junior golf, then they head over to the pool and then they get something to eat? Do you have anything like that?
Yeah, we've got a camp that's not specific to golf, and it's tennis. It's actually mostly tennis and the pool, but there's a golf component to it as well. So juniors is probably the biggest area where there's, I guess, cross departments. That's not just food and beverage.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's a food and beverage component to junior programs as well, but I would say that probably juniors is the biggest thing. We do a lot of events where, like our really big events, where other departments outside of food and beverage are involved, just because of the scope of the event, and we need more people to help. But I would say junior golf is the biggest area where you're getting 3, 4, 5 departments involved in one specific area.
Mm-hmm. Great. Excellent. How did you arrange time to collect the necessary information in different areas which you were unfamiliar with, like turf grass management, food and bev?
Yeah, so one of the great things about the onboarding process at Congressional is I spent an hour with all the department heads individually, and just got a chance to really, just get a sense of who they were, but also learn about the different departments in the club. And it's in work, you want to make sure that you're developing relationships with people in a professional way. So we're not talking about necessarily it's not like small talk, personalized, but getting a sense on how people tick in a professional environment, like what motivates them, how do they manage their staff. You got people that have been at the club for 20 years. What changes have they seen, positive and negative, over that time frame? So it's really important to tap into people that, especially that have been there for a long time, because they're a wealth of information. And I think that one of the biggest challenges when you go to a new club is you have a skill set, but it's not really applicable yet because you don't understand the members and you don't understand the club. And
Hmm.
so the faster you can get up to speed on that type of stuff, the more effective you're going to be in a shorter amount of time. And leaning on people that have been there a long time is a good way to kind of fast track that process.
Excellent. Yeah, I remember during my book work, I sat down with the superintendent during the winter, and he informed me of everything that they work on and try to avoid in terms of just taking care of the golf course, prepping it right at the beginning of the year, getting it ready throughout the summer and before the winter, what kind of steps they go through, how they do staffing, what staff they look for. I mean, there's a lot of their staff members that have to be certified in different areas. Like guys that work with the chemicals, they have to be certified with working with chemicals. It's not just some guy making minimum wage just spraying down the fairways or just heading into the woods spraying some stuff down to avoid weeds or disease on the greens. These guys actually kind of go to school to work with chemicals to ensure that the facility is properly taken care of, because that's pretty much the center of the entire operation is the golf course, believe it or not. Even with, like you said, you have 3 pools and tennis courts. I don't did you say you had a fitness center?
We have a fitness center as well. Yeah.
Yeah, based on the bookwork, they show the organizational chart, and right smack dab in the middle is the golf course, and then everything else is fitness and aquatics and tennis and racquetball, the clubhouse. Everything is centered around uh, the golf operations.
Yeah. It's the club's biggest asset.
Yeah. How do you assist assistants with a timeline of how to complete the PGM program?
I think the hardest thing about, I was fortunate to go through a BGM program, so it's a lot more structured just in terms of the bookwork. The hardest thing about going through the different levels on your own is just the discipline it takes to sit down and really knock it out. So that's something that I've got one assistant right now that is going through the bookwork, and I'm on him all the time about where he is with the bookwork, with the levels, with the work experience. Has he scheduled his tests? And the reason I'm doing that is because if I'm not doing it, no one is. And so it's important to have someone that got a bug in your ear about making sure that you're continuing to work on it. So uh, personally, I don't know how I would have done in that environment, because you're as a golf professional, as an assistant professional, you're working 60, 70 hours a week. And when you get home, the last thing you want to do is sit in front of a computer and knock out work experience activities. But it is incredibly important for your career to continue to progress, to make sure you get it done. So just having that someone that's accountable, or keeping someone accountable, that's where I see my role with helping these guys make sure that they're just staying on it. We also help with the financial aspect of it as well, and because it is expensive going through the levels, and um, we don't pay for all of it. We do help with kind of alleviate that financial burden a little bit.
Yeah, and Tyler and Evan, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but what the APA does, and I'm not completely familiar with it, so don't quote me on this, but you can go to the MAPGA site. They do offer a scholarship for when you complete your one of your levels for test, or one of your levels, and then you pass all your tests. Based upon your test scores, you're possibly able to get a scholarship for the next level, or whatever you just paid for level 2. If I'm correct on that, Christine, there is a financial aspect where they can get awarded for their performance in a certain level.
Yes, that is true. There is a scholarship or kind of type of program there, and I am trying to locate the link, and I will post it in the chat as soon as I get to it.
Okay, perfect. Take your time.
Yep.
Yeah. And there's just like the quote that I hear all the time: "You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink." But I mean, there's that student that they're kind of shy to ask questions too. They might still work in outside ops or work in the shop maybe a couple hours a week, but working outside ops just depending on the facility that they're at. And they're on a subject where they aren't really familiar with, and maybe the head pro or one of the assistants who went through the program kind of can help them out, but they're hesitant to ask questions. So, I mean, for you to be able to ask questions or call the mentor office, I know I bugged Eric Hogue at headquarters probably 2 or 3 times a month during the winter, just asking him question after question, just because I wasn't able to reach my head pro sometimes, and we didn't have this associate development program available. So I constantly like ask questions, but I did make a timeline of different areas to cover in my book work. And I mean, if you just, like I said, make a timeline of when you should accomplish things, as soon as you know it, you're passing your level and you're just signing up for the next seminar and waiting to head down to Port St. Lucie.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's one of the awesome things about the golf business is that people are always willing to help. And, you pick up the phone and you call any of the pros in our section, no one's going to say no to answering a question. It's really, and it's not just this section, but anywhere, you can call up, just look up the phone number for a golf course, call up, and the head pro is for the most part going to get back to you with an answer. So definitely tap into those resources.
Now, when you go into a golf committee meeting, do they have a 1, 5, or 10-year objective designed for the future of the club? Or do they kind of go like 1 year at a time, or how do they kind of talk about what the future is like over at Congressional or any other club for that matter?
So at a club like Congressional, we have like a capital budget and an operations budget. So the capital is things that are over $5,000 is how it's defined, but it's really big picture stuff. And those are ways to significantly improve facilities or the teaching program and things like that. And that's the long-term stuff. We're actually undergoing a full-scale renovation of the blue course, the championship course. So that is currently the long-term project the club is embarking on. The course is going to be under construction all of this year, and will probably open, I would say, end of May, early June of next year. Thankfully, the stay-at-home order didn't affect the construction, so we're able to continue on with that. That's the long-term goal, and really, what it is creating a golf course that is going to be it's going to be long-lasting and kind of like old classic feel. The blue course was renovated in the 80s, and it had a very modern look to it, which was very in vogue at the time, the renovation. But when you play it now, it didn't feel like you were playing Marion or Wingfoot or these old great classic golf courses. It felt like it was kind of a cookie cutter golf course. So you're hitting a lot of the same shots, and just didn't have the feel that you should have when you're playing Congressional, right? Congressional has hosted some great events, but it's really the clubhouse that's kind of the iconic aspect of the club. It wasn't the golf course. And so we're trying to create the golf course that's going to match up with the club's reputation. As part of that, we've signed on with the PGA of America. We're going to host 8 of their events over a 14-year period, starting in 22 with the Women's PGA. And we're going to host 2 women's PGAs, 2 senior PGAs, a junior PGA, the PNC, and then the PGA Championship in 2031 and the Ryder Cup in 2036. So all of that stuff is the club's legacy and the club's reputation over talking a 50-year time frame. So that's really the big picture, long range outlook. From a 1-year standpoint, this year's a little, it's very unique in the fact that it's one golf course, and there's a lot of parameters in place that Like, we've secured tee times at other local clubs, and it's not a normal year. But year to year, it's about how do we improve the member experience? How do we improve the tournament experience? You know, when you're at a club where it's all the same people, you know, a private club, you're just constantly reinventing the wheel, because you're just trying to make the experience feel fresh and new and unique. And when your golf committee turns over, you're going to have new initiatives that people come up with from just new, fresh perspectives, which is great. And that really is kind of your guide for from a 1 year standpoint. But it's all mostly about experience. How do we improve the golf experience?
Okay, now into getting to the golf shop and tournaments for those objectives, do you have any personal objectives that you just mentioned to the golf committee that you're kind of working on with tournament operations? Like you're trying to increase participation in this area, or things in the golf shop that you have objectives with that, you know, you kind of control and they don't?
I think it's just important to let the golf committee know what you're working on and be proactive. Like, these are all the things that our goals for us this year or for the next couple months. So when it comes to tournaments, for us, it's about tweaking the experience. So for example, we have our premier event of the year is called the President's Cup. It's a member event. It's Father's Day weekend. Mm-hmm. This past 2 years ago, so my first year, it was actually my first weekend at the club, so I had nothing to do with this, but we actually got the running presidents from the Nats to come and run around on the driving range, and they did the race right before the shotgun went out. You know, people were taking pictures with them. Really kind of neat experience. The following year, we wanted to do something. We didn't want to do the same thing, but we wanted to do something really cool and unique and kind of add that wow factor. And we actually got these guys to parachute. We did sing the national anthem before the shotgun, and we got these guys to parachute down with an American flag and land on the putting green during the national anthem. So you really kind of, and it, relative to the size of the event, it wasn't that expensive. It was maybe $10 to $15 per player for us to be able to do something like that. And so for us to be able to kind of give committee members a sneak peek on stuff like that, one, it makes them feel like they're in the know, but two, it's, you know, just letting them know these are the things that we're thinking about. This is how proactive we're being, and really gives them a feeling like we're trying to always make things better. So stuff like that is very important. One of our guiding principles from an employee standpoint, not just in golf, but at Congressional in general, is continuous improvement. And we use a phrase, it's better, unique, and new. So your hospitality, the way you deliver hospitality has to be better, unique, and new. It doesn't have to be all three of those things, but we're always trying to deliver things that are either better, unique, or new. And the way we describe that, there's this recipe for these rum buns, and it's been at the club forever. And when we have new employees, we say, how do you make the rum bun better, unique, or new without changing the recipe? And people come up with great ideas. The rum bun has frosting on it, so people say, you put food coloring in the frosting. And for St. Patrick's Day, you put green food coloring or pink food coloring for Valentine's Day, or you change the way that it's presented. And it gets people thinking outside the box in a way that doesn't really cost any money, but it totally changes the way that someone is presented with something. And it's really fun to watch people come up with all these great ideas in ways that, you know, how do we reinvent ourselves for something that people love, but they've been receiving it the same way for a long period of time. And making sure that we're communicating that type of stuff to the golf committee is very important.
That's cool. That's actually very interesting. I'm just jotting that down. But thinking of the President's Run around the range, mm-hmm. Just like the past presidents or the presidents of the Washington Nationals.
It was, yeah, those, you know, the guys that run around in like the fourth inning.
Oh
with the
yeah,
big heads. Yeah, the
okay.
mascots. Yeah.
Mhm.
So we had 3 out of the 4 of them running around on the ranch.
That's fun. That's funny. We should have Christine. You should pass this along. We should have the presidents of the chapters and then the section run around the range during the section championship. See how that goes. You never know. Or you could just have John do it. Let's see. Let's get back to this. Yeah, there we go. How do you how do you evaluate your current staff based upon their current performance and future goals?
So one of the things I mentioned in the first little bit I talked about is the skill set of being a head professional versus being an assistant professional. And one of the biggest adjustments is managing people and being able to evaluate but give critical feedback to people on how to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an uncomfortable thing to do, and most people would rather just not do it and let someone continue doing a bad job because they don't want to feel uncomfortable and give someone good feedback. So it's something I'm very open about, particularly in the onboarding process, is letting someone know that they are here to get better and they're here to move on and go on and become a head professional or a director of instruction or whatever their goal is. And I'm going to, be critical of them and push them to get better and develop their skills. And I'm not going to be shy about giving them feedback. And so they know up front that I'm going to be coming to them I'm going to make sure that I'm encouraging them and letting them know when they're doing a great job, but I'm going to give them feedback when there's something that they need to work on. And that way it kind of gets rid of the elephant in the room. And it's easier for me then to sit down and have a conversation with someone about, hey, this didn't go according to plan. This is what we need to do in order to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And the feedback's received very positively because it's coming from a place of helping them. So helping people work towards their goals is very important, making sure that the team is writing down their goals and from a yearly standpoint, but also, 3 and 5 year goals. And then it gets back to the book work, keeping them accountable. And, if someone says, I want to be, I want to be making money playing in section events, right? Well, at the end of their shift, are they going home? Are they going to the back of the range? Are they playing golf with members? How much are they really working towards that goal? And if they're not doing what they should be doing to achieve it, that's where my role is to step in and say, hey, you said you have this goal, but your actions are not aligning with achieving it.
Mm-hmm. Now, if they're accomplishing their goals, if they say, oh, I want to get TPI certified or get TPI level 1, get US Kid certified, or any type of improvements in terms of education, how do you adjust their responsibilities from once they kind of accomplish something in terms of making them more qualified? How do you just adjust their daily responsibilities or responsibilities throughout the year, just based upon things that they completed or improved on?
It's a good question. I think in terms of like TPI certified, that's instructional, right? So you can't really increase someone's responsibility there, but you can help promote the fact that they've gone through something like that in an effort to get them more lessons. So I think that was something that's instructional based in terms of a certification. Kind of letting people know that that's something that they've gone through is important. But other areas like, going through the certified professional program or doing or say someone became a PGA member, you're going to lean on them more and, find out what people are really good at and lean on them in those areas. I'm someone that early in I think my first year as a PGA member right out of college, I went to rule school for the first time, the USGA rule school. It's 3.5 days. And I did that because I never wanted to get caught in a situation where I got embarrassed because I gave an incorrect ruling, or I just didn't know the rules. And as a golf professional, I think it's really important you don't have to be, an expert at the rules, but I think it's really important to be able to navigate the rule book and, make an informed decision. And because you don't rules are something that it's very usually high tension, because it's a tournament when there's these big rulings that you have to come up with. And so I took it upon myself to go out and learn as much as I could about the rules. But what ended up happening was my knowledge of the rules and my interest in the rules far exceeded my boss in Boston and in Florida. And so both of them were calling me in to help with those areas. So it almost happens organically. If someone becomes very, very good and proficient in something, it becomes very obvious that you're going to lean on them in that area. So I would recommend that everyone try and become an expert in a specific area, something that interests you, because you're not going to be motivated to pursue something that doesn't interest you. But make yourself valuable in an area that other people don't necessarily see value in. For me, it was the rules, but it could be club fitting, it could be club repair, it could be tournaments, it could be anything. Merchandising, but become an expert in a specific field that other people are going to come to you for advice. It's impossible to be an expert in everything, especially golf business related, because there's so many different areas and so many different hats that we wear on a regular basis. But the better you become in a specific area, the more your head professional or your golf committee or whoever depends on you is going to lean on you in that area. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely makes sense. Yeah, when I was in school, we in golf management school, the teacher in the rules of golf class said, okay, you have 20 seconds. Here's a ruling. He wrote it up on the board. He's like, you have 20 seconds to find it in the rules book and tell me what the correct ruling is. And then he's like, okay, you have 30 seconds because this is going to apply to the decisions book. Remember, we're going fast because there's a group behind this group that you're doing a ruling, or they don't want to sit around for 5 minutes when it's something simple. Oh, it's 2 club lengths, drop it no nearer the hole. Or, oh, sorry, it's a 2-stroke penalty. So that's what they were expressing a lot too. And yeah, those rules classes are great whenever they're close by. I know they have one at the PGA show, I think, that you can do too. But that's ideal and understandable of what you want out of your staff. How can you improve tournament quality through merchandising trends?
So for us with merchandise relative to events, it's all about the favor, right? And how do you create something that's, because everyone's got a million golf shirts, everyone has a million hats, right? How do you put something in front of them that they maybe haven't seen before? It gets back to that better, unique, and new principle. So for us, it's tapping in. We'll tap into maybe a vendor that we haven't used before, but is going to up and coming. Our member guest last year, we used Stitch, and we did the shopping spree with Stitch. They put together 4 or 5 different packages that people could pick from, and we sold a lot of golf bags, and we put really cool new product in front of people. So it's about giving people access to something that you not necessarily are sure that is going to work, or you're going to not ready to put a bunch of inventory in your shop, but you have a captive audience and you can really get a pulse on how people react to a certain item. So that's a great opportunity to do that, and tapping into your peers in the business and seeing what other people are doing for stuff like that is a great way to be up on the trends of that type of thing.
Yeah, I got like a little corny story. When I was the competition director for the Connecticut section, just as a volunteer, I saw the tournament viewers they were giving out to the kids, and there were these socks that had the PGA logo on them. And I literally turned to the tournament director and I was like, if you have any left over, I'd feel free to, can I take one? Because I thought they were cool. There's socks with the PGA logo on them. I mean, it wasn't a hat with the PGA logo on it or just a sleeve of Pro Bs or anything. I thought it was really cool. How do you maintain a successful golf shop? Something that whenever a member comes in, they might be here 2-3 times a week, or they come in the shop and they want to look around for 10 or 15 minutes and want to see something new.
It's, especially at a private club, it's incredibly difficult to make sure that the golf shop always seems fresh. And you can't do it with new merchandise all the time, right? Because it's based on your turnover. So I continue to say this, but how do you make it seem fresh and better, unique, and new? How do you make it seem like it's a new golf shop that they have never walked in the door before? Moving tables around, moving fixtures around, maybe the shirts that were folded, hang them, and fold the shirts that were hanging. Simple stuff like that. It just makes the shop seem kind of revitalized and fresh. And also, when you walk in, making sure that everything's clean, everything's stocked, that it looks like people are paying attention to it, and then the presentation that the team gives. So when people walk into the golf shop, is the team standing behind the counter? Are they walking out and greeting people? That personalized service or greeting goes a long way to just making people feel at home. Maybe they're going to stay in the shop a little bit longer since you've recognized them and ask them how their kids are doing or something like that. And the staying up on trends is really important as well, making sure that you're trying out different products so that people aren't just always seeing Peter Millar, Polo, and whatever your other lines are. That every once in a while you're bringing in a different line to show people that you're not just resting on past success, that you're looking to get better.
Do you bring in like one new vendor per season, like a new vendor for spring, summer, fall? We brought in Grayson for spring and summer, and we just went through the boxes today, and that line is incredible. Like, great feeling shirts. They have a nice style to it. Do you bring in any new product just for 1 year, see how it does in terms of sales? Even if it is good in sales, do you say, okay, we did Grayson, now let's work on a different product. Let's get more performance. Let's throw in Adidas real quick just for the summer because it's going to be hot and they want some climate light, climate cool technology. Do you do anything of that nature?
Yeah, we have our core vendors, and then we've got more like boutique vendors that we'll bring in for smaller orders, and we're always changing that over. Because sometimes someone that we bring in early on becomes really successful and they become a stock, like a staple vendor. Not often, because most of those companies are a lot smaller and they don't have the same DNA that like a Peter Millar has. It's always constantly reinventing itself, and they get stale after a while. So typically those companies don't end up being in the shop for a really long period of time. But still, it's when they're really popular, it's important for our members to feel like they have access to the latest and greatest stuff.
Okay, great. And what's your typical inventory management like in the shop? Do you do monthly inventory? Do you do maybe once every 2 months? What are your typical practices?
We do quarterly inventory, so 4 times a year. But we'll do like spot inventory on the high volume stuff like gloves, balls. We're doing inventory on that almost on a weekly basis. So the things that you just need to have in stock all the time, and that there's hats is another thing where usually at the end of 3 months, you're going to have a big variance in those items just because they're constantly getting purchased. And so, whether it's things being forgotten or rung up or whatever the reasons are, there's countless reasons you have variances, but those are items where tends to be larger variances because there's purchases of them. So staying on top of those to make sure that your variances are smaller, and also making sure that you're ordering a adequate amount, because that's like, you can never run out of gloves. You always need large gloves. That's something that it's not like, oh, we don't have a large shirt in this particular style anymore. Like that's acceptable. You can always order that, but a glove is something that someone needs right away. So making sure that you're staying on top of those is really important.
Now, when you see shrinkage in the shop, what typical actions do you take if you realize, oh, we're down 5 dozen Pro V1s, or we're down a dozen gloves? What are your typical actions? Do you kind of like look to the assistant professional staff and kind of say, hey, we got to be more assertive when we get to charging people? We got to get into a better practice mode. If somebody goes in the shop and grabs a glove, do you kind of just keep in the back of your mind, oh, I gotta ring up Mr. Smith for a glove and a sleeve of balls, because we weren't in the shop, but he did tell me that he took a glove and a sleeve of balls, and now it's on me to charge him.
Yeah, we're fortunate that we haven't had too many issues with that, but I think it's just constant reminders on making sure that we're ringing things up correctly. We have a lot of SKUs, and so just making sure that people are paying attention. But it's a lot of it's training too, and how effectively are we training people? And when we have new product coming into the shop, are we doing a good job and letting people know what it is and where it is? And the more information you give people, typically the better they're going to be with stuff like that.
Okay, excellent. All right. What practices do you do to analyze market trends? Well, you kind of already answered this during past questions. Peers, communication with vendors, social media. Do you ever check like the PGA magazine? They have that area in the magazine that says top products for private, public facilities. Do you ever kind of look just to see, oh, I've never heard of this company before, and then you kind of do some research?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that list could be 100 things long, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we've gotten ideas from PGA Magazine. We get ideas from Golf Digest. We get ideas from Golf Magazine. You get ideas from just walking. Every time I go to another golf course, I walk into the golf shop and look like what's something that I've never seen before. What's something that they're doing that's working well that we're not doing. So making sure you never want to feel comfortable with what you're doing. There's always something that you can be doing that's better and above and beyond what you're currently doing. So the more ideas you can get, they're not all going to apply to your facility, but the more that you're absorbing other people's ideas, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, I remember when Freddie Couples played a tournament with spikeless shoes from Echo. That just started that whole trend of spikeless shoes, or buying Echo shoes. Everybody saw that on TV. Announcers were talking about it, and then it took off. And I got to say, 3/4 of our shoes in the shop are spikeless. Nobody really wants spikes anymore.
That was the 2010 Masters. He wore those Echo shoes. You couldn't buy them anywhere.
Yeah.
And you can tell it's totally revitalized.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I have a single pair of golf shoes now that has replaceable spikes. But yeah, it's funny how stuff like that just kind of catches fire.
Yeah, it's kind of like 2 in 1. If you buy a certain spikeless shoe, you can also wear it on the street, just not even at the golf course too. People won't even know they're golf shoes too, which is cool. Some of them I wear when I'm actually exercising too, just depending on what they are. How do you try to accomplish the PGA experience at your facility?
So the PGA experience to me is, the byline or the tagline for the PGA of America is the experts in the game and the business of golf, right? So when I think of the PGA experience, I think that, are we giving people the sense that we are the experts in what we do? That doesn't mean that we're know-it-alls, but we all have our areas that we know a lot about. And so do people feel like they can rely on us for information, whether it's teaching or new clubs or, I just did a seminar last week about the World Handicap System for our members. And, are we the experts, and are we continuing to stay the experts? Are we continuing to make sure that we're always bringing in new information? So that's really important for, especially a club of our size. I have a large team. We'll have 8 assistants and then 6, 7, 8 interns. And are we putting in information in front of our team to make sure that they're the experts as well? Not, again, you're never going to be the expert in everything, but if a member comes in the shop and asks a question, if you don't know the answer, who else on the team is an expert in that field, and you can lean on them for the information. So making sure that the members are proud of the knowledge and the expertise that the golf staff has.
Excellent. Now, what services are you kind of implementing at your facility to increase member satisfaction? And this kind of applies to outside operations staff as well, and not just the professional staff too.
Well, ironically, when we reopen, it's gonna be very hands off.
Yeah.
We're not gonna be given much service, but just in general, I've said this earlier in the program. We're trying to make a big club feel small, and how do we do that in a way but still be effective, right? We have 3,500 members, and how are we making sure that the golf experience feels genuine, doesn't feel like a resort, but still do our jobs effectively when it comes to billing for carts and things like that. So I think the biggest thing that I've learned, I wouldn't say the biggest, but one of the big things I've learned over the last 2 years of being congressional is the importance of having the senior team in the highest visible member areas, because 1, people see a familiar face, but 2, having the knowledge of who people are and their preferences and which Mr. Murphy that is. And when it comes to billing the golf cart and making sure that things are accurate is super important for the overall experience. So leaning on your senior people for those areas is really important.
Excellent. Now, let's say you have a member that gets right to the golf course. They drop off their bags at the bag drop. How are you ensuring that your outside operations staff is kind of reaching that mission and that vision, and going to the member with a smile on their face, asking them how their day is going, would they like to be on a golf cart, would they like to walk? How do you kind of know that they're giving the best experience possible, even though they might not even think of being in the business in the future, and this is just a summer job, and they're just grabbing clubs and throwing them on a golf cart? How are you kind of ensuring that they're doing things to your satisfaction?
I think training people on the culture and the mission of the club versus training them on the little details of their job is how you're going to get to that area faster. If people know that their job is to make people feel at home and welcome, they're going to greet people with a smile. Like they're going to ask people if they can help them. They're going to be proactive about that stuff. They might necessarily know the answer to the question that the member asked them, but they're intuitively, they're going to know more. They're going to be better equipped to create a better experience because they know like the bigger picture goal, as opposed to you stand here and you pull these bags and then you do this and you do that. Instead of giving someone a checklist, give them the tools to kind of create an experience and make people feel at home. And over time, they're going to learn the ins and outs of the job. But if you just flood someone with the policy procedures and not give them the overall like bigger picture goal, you're not going to create a great experience. And that's not just outside operations. That's interns. That's with caddies. Our caddies are independent contractors, but making sure that the caddies are, making the members feel like $1 million. That's the people will remember how you made them feel long after they, noticed that that their clubs were cleaned or weren't cleaned at the end of the rounds.
Yeah, I was reading this. I remember this distinctively in the customer relations of 2.0. They said if you make a member unhappy or they see something they don't like, that one member will tell 20 members, and then the 20 members that were told that will tell 7 other members. So it's not as if you're just upsetting one member and they know what you did wrong. They're telling several others. So it's almost like you're doing it in a huge group of people.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot, but at the same time, that information can be paralyzing. Like think about on the golf course, if you're afraid of hitting a bad shot, when you step over the ball, you're not going to hit a good shot, right? Because you're worried about hitting a bad shot. If you're worried about upsetting members, you're never going to do a good job because you're just walking on eggshells all the time. So it's hard to realize that not everything you do is going to be interpreted positively by everyone. And if people see you acting genuinely, and they get to know who you are, the mistakes that you make they're not going to be as impactful, or they're not going to be as long lasting in terms of the way people feel, because they know that you're there to, you're coming from a good place and you have a good outlook. So while, yes, it's important to make sure that we're doing the best job and trying to create a great experience, don't be paralyzed by being afraid of upsetting people, because you're never going to deliver great service that way.
Yeah, there's this head pro in the Connecticut section. His last name was Carney. I forgot his first name. He's now head professional emeritus, and he was talking at the fall meeting, and he said, the 40 years I was at Waterbury Country Club, I usually upset about 5 members a year. If you do the math, that's half our membership. So throughout my career, I upset half the membership, and we didn't get into a spat, but half the membership, I didn't please them throughout my entire career. So there was at one point where a member left the facility. They were upset with my actions. So that's what he was trying to express, and just let them know, what, there's going to be a time where you upset somebody. But
yeah, we all make mistakes.
Yeah, stuff happens. And looks like Todd Salmons just popped in. Thanks for coming on in. Appreciate you joining the second session for golf operations.
No worries. And, let me know if anybody's got any questions, for sure.
All right. Now, how do you, Jason, how do you manage your monthly and yearly budget and keep an eye on it, not going over or kind of staying under that number?
So budgets are one thing too, as an assistant pro, that you don't necessarily get a lot of experience with. So a lot of budgets are kind of learning as you go. We build our budget starting in July. Our fiscal year starts on November 1st. So we've got several phases of the budgeting process. We use what's called zero-based budgeting. So essentially we're starting from scratch every year in terms of building the budget for the following year. Another thing with zero-based budgeting is we're not going based on a dollar amount. We're going based on the quantity of stuff. So what I mean by that is we're building our budget based on how many golf carts we think we're going to rent, not chasing a dollar amount. And we use the previous 3 years as a trend to kind of guide us, but that's not the roadmap that we're using. It's just a guide. So making sure that we're looking ahead to the following year, what's going to be different about this year from the last 3 years? Where are we going to have variances in our budget? 2020 was a great example of that because we were only going to have one golf course. So we budgeted down significantly just in terms of revenues with the guest fees and tournament fees and cart fees because we're only doing half the number of rounds. So, using this year as a, next year we won't build the budget based on this year because it's a totally different set of circumstances. We're going to have the blue course opening in June. We're going to have a ton of demand for that. So making sure that you're using past data to help you, but not relying on it wholeheartedly. Make sure you're looking ahead. And then throughout the year, having the flexibility to adjust based on how things are going, right? So from a labor standpoint, if you have really bad weather and you're needing to, and that's killing your revenue, right? People are canceling your rounds, not bringing guests out. You need to adjust in your costs. So sending people home early, things like that. Or you just need to make sure that you're, when you're down in your revenues, that you're cutting your costs as well.
Okay, perfect. How do you address negative issues that arise?
It's, a case-by-case basis. The biggest thing is just making sure that, and when we say negative issues, we're talking about basically it's mistakes that we made, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just making sure that we're owning up to it. There's nothing that makes someone more upset than someone making a mistake and not admitting fault. And even if it's not really our fault, but someone feels like we did something incorrectly, you still got to kind of take it on the chin and own up to it. So we're fortunate that we haven't had too many issues, but when they do happen, especially as a manager, have your staff's back. So when someone makes a mistake, make sure that you're kind of shielding them and you're taking the hit and kind of working through the problem. Have them help you get to a solution, but make sure that you're letting them feel your support.
Okay, great. And the collaboration with your assistants, your interns, your outside staff, entire staff at the facility, do you find it useful during the year? Even if it's a decision that you have to make, do you kind of say, what, I want to see what other people think about it, because there might be a area that I'm not even thinking about, or they have some ideas that are very useful.
It's critical for getting buy-in from your team that you're getting people's input. So whether it's a favor that you want to get for an event, or you're thinking about making an operational change with that, doing something differently, you got to rely on, the people that are the stakeholders, like who's going to be affected by this decision. Let's get their input. Now you can go down a wormhole where you're getting too much input and then decisions aren't getting made. So that there's a balance act there where ultimately you have to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. But it's important to definitely get people's feedback on decisions big and small. People want to feel like their opinions matter.
Great. Yeah, because I work with Mike Adkins, and it seems like once or twice a month we gets the entire professional staff in the office and asks us our ideas to see what we think we should do in terms of tournament favors or in the shop, or he wants us to know what we should do at the range or during an event to make it more appealing, more fun. Any certain ideas. He brings us into ladies golf meetings, men's golf meetings, just if they are willing to ask us questions. If the treasurer of the club or president of the club says, "Oh, Jeff, what do you think on this side? Brendan, what are your views on this type of theme for a 9 and dine?" I think it's great that head pros and directors of golf are asking what assistants want too. You can learn from anybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But are there any questions for Todd? He just came on in regards to bookwork. Are there any kind of common issues you see in level 2, Todd, that there are frequent calls from associates needing assistance?
Not a whole lot. I mean, it's pretty equal across the board when you talk about level 1, 2, and 3 for the calls that we get in the portfolio. I will tell you a couple things in 3.0. You can call us anytime when you're in any, you have trouble with any activity, and we'll be there to be able to help you move along in that. We will not, though, look at your portfolio before it is 100% complete. So when you call, don't ask us to go look at your portfolio. We can't do that until it's 100% complete. However, if you've got any questions about any activity, we will spend the time on the phone with you that we need to, through email, whatever it is that you need.
Okay, great. And in terms of different facility types, trying to get golf operations, merchandising and inventory, things of that nature, what do you see as a main difference for municipal track, public, private, non-equity, private equity, or a resort? What differences do you see in the bookwork that some associates kind of have trouble answering, or say, I don't have some of this information, the facility not willing to provide that much information?
Yeah, Jason kind of alluded to it just a minute ago when he talked about the numbers and a lot of the things that we ask you to get together as far as numbers go. A lot of associates don't have access to those numbers. So that can be a little bit difficult. We ask them to utilize the case studies. And you brought up a bunch of different beasts there. You brought up private, you brought up non-equity, you brought up public and things of that nature. So what I would suggest is that all these people made their decision in level 1. They made the decision in which case study that they were going to go with, whether it be public and private. It'd be great for us to be able to have case studies in everything that you're talking about, but that would be massive. So we just have basically a public one and a private one. And so I would suggest that whichever way that you want to go in your career is the one you should use. And then, jump into that case study and read all about that, because there's some pertinent information there. There's also there's financial statements in those case studies that you can use as a template for your own. I would never suggest that you just make up the numbers, because when you start doing that, they're not going to pan out for you. But I would suggest doing your best to figure out what it is. And if it's just a small part of the merchandising operation, I think we asked you to do a activity on hats or one item in your pro shop that you should be able to get some numbers at least for an item in your pro shop to be able to complete that when we talk about merchandising. And I will tell you too that I'm on the road, not now, but generally I'm on the road a lot. Going to different sections and doing our specialized program. And the number one question that I get from members is, can you help me do a business plan? And the second, it's amazing, but that's what I get. And the second most often question that I hear is, can you help me read a financial statement? And both of those questions go back to generally when they got in the business and when I got in the business. I got in the business in the mid 80s. We operated under a build it and they will come type of syndrome, because as a matter of fact, there was even a study that went out that said you could build a golf course a day. This was in the late 80s. Said you could build a golf course a day for the next 10 years and not meet the demand. And what did we do? I mean, one year we built 375, and it doesn't take a mental heavyweight to figure out that's more than one a year. And then in 2010, back in 2010, the numbers were we closed 107 and opened 45. Oh, and by the way, most of those closings were in the United States, and most of those openings were abroad somewhere else. So, I don't mean to paint a dim picture, but what I do mean to paint is a picture that you absolutely need to understand financial statements, business plans, because, in most operations now, the people that are ahead of the operations and the owners are bean counters, man, and they're looking at the numbers and they're looking at, can we survive? And especially right now, I mean, you're in the middle of this pandemic. I mean, are you going to survive following this? There's a lot of small businesses that don't. And it's imperative that you know how to read. And matter of fact, if you can read a financial statement and you can put a business plan together, you're going to have a job for a long, long time.
Good. Yeah. And the other thing is when you're in seminars, Tyler and Evan, just have the opportunity to network, get as many numbers as you can, so you can kind of, if you don't have it, you do call for mentorship help, but you also can call other people and see how they're doing, but also know where they are in the business too. Because a lot of people switch sections, move all over the country, go down to Florida. I called a buddy that I met at level 2, and I was just like, "What are you doing over the winter? Are you going down south?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I got a job at Naples Grant that we can work at for 6 months." I'm like, "Oh, that's great. How did you hear about the job?" And he's like, "Okay, I did TJ Links with the employment." And I was like, "Okay, I'll try that." Got a job at Vanderbilt Country Club, and then I was able to just talk with different associates. I ended up meeting one of the guys I went to level 3 with. He's in the section as well. I don't know if anybody knows Doug Kim. He's at a public track, but he's an A1 now. And now I can talk to him about the process he went through from going from assistant to head professional. So it's important to network. I know you can kind of say to yourself, "Oh, I might not see these guys ever again. I might just see them at level 2," but it does help to kind of get numbers and hear from others. You can collaborate with them, see how their season's going, and it's 1 or 2 phone calls a year just to catch up and see what they're up to, and that's really important. But other than that, are there any questions for Todd or Jason in regards to level 2 or anything we went over? Tyler, do you have any questions?
I can't think of any ones in particular, but I definitely appreciate all the information and the advice. It's definitely been it's been good. I've been taking notes here on and off too, so definitely want to refer to them.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you signed up. I hope more people signed up, but I'm gonna send an email out to some head pros and have them make the initiative and have their associates or assistants who are not PGA members yet, sign up on these, since it's on Mondays and courses are closed, and there's really no excuse that they can't do it unless there's something that does take precedence. Let's see, 2 chats. Useful info for sure. The business plan is definitely a weak point for me. Is there any advice you can give Todd in regards to the business plan?
Yeah, go back to your level 1 material. The great thing about the program now, the new program in 3.0 is that, and Jeff, you'll know this. Did you go through 3.0 or you went through 2.0, right?
I did 2.0, but I was actually able to go back and check my level 1 bookwork. I think I was able to do that.
Yeah, you might have been able to check your bookwork, but your access to your information went away. And I don't know why we ever did that, but we did it even, years ago when we started putting things online. It was like you had access to your information until you went to the next level. When you went to the next level, you lost your access to level 1 information. It's not that way anymore. Now you have access to everything that was behind you. So my suggestion would be, number 1 is to go back and look at that business planning coursework, that content that is on the site and available to you, and the 5-step plan. And look, that's a 5-step plan that we use, that we teach, but that used to be a 9-step plan. And there's all kinds of different plans out there as business planning goes, but you need to understand and realize what your vision, what your mission is, and do you have a mission statement at that facility? You need to understand what your goals and objectives are for each year, and then you need to understand what your strategies are, or create your strategies to complete those goals. And the last thing that you do in business planning is evaluate, what the decisions that you made. And if everybody's got a plan, it's pretty simple to go back to that plan and say, oops, I missed this, or yep, we did this and we made it and we did. And so to evaluate what the things that you put together at the end is imperative. And a lot of times we don't do that. A lot of times we go through a year and we say, oh, it's great. I don't need to look at anything, but man, you need to look at everything, because even if you had a great year, let's say that, just for giggles, that we say that, we were going to make 200,000 and we made 800,000. The owner's still going to raise an eyebrow at that and say, well, how come you were so low on your revenue projections? And so it's the closer you can get to those projections, the better you're going to be. So, and to have that business plan and to have that, to be able to go back and look at that and to measure up and see how you did, it's imperative. And a lot of times it's what we left out. I mean, look, when I got in the golf business, I knew golf professionals that operated out of a cigar box, and they'd go to the register, every other day and take a bunch of money out and put it in that cigar box and put it underneath their desk and go home. And because they could, right? And because that's the way the golf business was. I mean, when I got in, there were, I was working at a public facility. When I first got in, there were 7 people standing in line. Guy in front of the line is giving me all kinds of grief. The pro comes out and tells him to get lost. He says, we don't need that guy. We got 6 people in line behind him ready to pay. I don't even know what he was mad about. It might have been the ball in the ball rack got taken or something. I don't know, but I don't remember. But I do know that we wouldn't do that today. I mean, today we'd be grabbing them by the arm, especially now. I mean, coming out of this pandemic, we're going to be, almost dragging them into the pro shops to get them to pay us some money to play some golf and have a good time.
Great. Well, I guess we can kind of end it here. It was great to have Jason available and Todd as well. Our next one is next Monday. It'll be level 3. We'll have Jim Estes for teaching and coaching, Joe Franz from the Elkridge Club for golf operations. Dan Aros will be in for as the master fitter. And then we have Evan Lambert as a recent elected PGA member who can kind of give his insight as well. He won't be able to provide answers because he was, I believe he was 2.0, but he'll be able to give you advice on, how to get through your bookwork and how to study for your tests and things of that nature. But if you want to sign up for that, feel free to email me. Another email is going to go out to the associates and assistants in the section to sign up for these soon. But other than that, it's great to see everybody, and be safe, stay healthy, and hopefully our golf courses open up soon.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff.
No problem. Have a good one.
Take care.